You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode number 8.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hey, we're back.
Oh, hi.
We're back for another episode because we love you and we love this podcast.
And we love Mondays, so happy Monday.
Happy Monday. We have a review before we get into today's podcast, and we thought we would share with you that review because it made our hearts sing.
Yes, so this is from Amber Rochelle. I am obsessed with this new podcast from Bree and Thais. These women are so high energy and no nonsense when it comes to laying down some serious truth bombs.
Mic drop.
I love their combination of divine strength and willingness to get super vulnerable. They're funny, witty, smart, and full of deep diving topics. I seriously can't get enough of these gals. So inspiring.
Thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Amber. We love you and are so happy that you're enjoying the podcast.
And that you're part of our collective. That's what it's all about, really, is creating a community of people who are just there and who just get it. And I do have to say, we have an event coming up in 2 days.
2 days. It's so good. It is at the Blow, which is a blow-dry bar in Brentwood. And it's going to be pretty fun. We have some great food and beverage sponsors. And I heard a little rumor that everyone is going to be able to get like a little hair touch-up while we're there as well.
We should get there early and do our hair touch-ups before the event.
Well, we have to look fancy. We're like the leaders.
I mean, I'm pretty excited. And fun fact, when Bree created the Eventbrite page for this Blow event, she did not want it to be Amplify Blow because that may sound a little dirty.
So if you have not yet gotten a ticket, you can grab one at Amplify BDB, that's for blow dry bar
or blow
.eventbrite.com. So Amplify BDB.eventbrite.com.
I think we still have a few tickets left. So if you're interested in joining us, make sure you buy that ticket ASAP.
Grab one. All of our events sell out.
Yep. Anyway, moving into this week's topic, I kind of want to dive into like a series of conversations, Bree. Not one topic specifically, but just a myriad of topics around the conversation of balance, boundaries, and health. Because we have just an amazing guest today. Katie Bressack is a health coach here in LA. And I know that talking about boundaries, balance, and health are really good preemptive theme conversations before the interview. Do you want to dive in?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I absolutely know when I'm not practicing good balance because my health is the first thing to go. And what I mean by my health is I stop feeding myself properly. Some of you may or may not know that I have pretty severe food allergies. So I have been celiac for almost 10 years. And when I go out to eat, sometimes if I am not having good balance in my life, I will eat at places that aren't necessarily the best to support a gluten-free diet. And also I've been sugar-free for the last 10 months. So really it's becomes, if I don't have good balance in my life, becomes really hard for me to support those eating habits because I can't necessarily just go somewhere and eat unless I want to go to like Cafe Gratitude and drop $50 on a meal, which don't get me wrong, I love to do, but it's just not sustainable. So for me, I know when I'm out of balance because I can absolutely feel it in my body with what I'm putting in and, how it's affecting me.
Yeah, and I love that. I think for you guys that are listening, you ladies and gentlemen that are listening, notice what it looks like for you when you get out of balance. Notice what it looks like for you when you're no longer feeling really good in your body, because our body has signals for us that tells us when we're no longer in balance, when we're no longer in flow. It's just an indication that you just went out of whack and it's time to come back to center.
Yeah, one of the other ways I can tell that I'm not prioritizing balance and health in my life is that I stop moving my body. And I'm definitely in a place right now where I have not been getting the kind of physical movement I need it's just not been a priority. And so that's another thing for me on the list of like healthy, balanceful things that I need to make sure that I'm doing in order to be my best self for, both me and my clients.
Yeah, I think that's important. And one of the things that I definitely have recognized is that balance does not look like stagnation. Balance does not necessarily mean sticking to one routine and that's it. You know, if you do the same thing every day, every day, every day, every day, same thing every day, that's not balance. That's stagnation. That's being boring. So balance is actually a flow. It's a wavering up and down, in and out around the center point, which is the home base for you, which is your home, which is within you. So balance isn't even something that's outside of you, it's something within you.
And
And
I think that really finding that balance is figuring out what you need in the given moment. And so for me, like in terms of the body movement stuff, I have like a list of maybe 5 things that I do. And in the moment, I figure out what my body wants, what is going to be best for me today in terms of keeping with that balance.
exactly. For me, oftentimes by bringing myself back to what do I need right now? What do I need right now? It helps me to get grounded in the present, which is really the only time that we have. We don't have the future. We don't have the past. And I can say it every podcast episode, and we will still forget because our mind's propensity is to focus on the future and focus on the past. I think I saw this cartoon that was really, really funny. It had 3 booths at a carnival. And the first booth was uh, Akashic Records. It was like past telling, like what your past lives were. Okay. And there was a huge line for that. And then the booth all the way to the right was the future teller. And there was a huge line for that. And then the center booth said meditation. And there was nobody in the line. And the woman behind the booth goes, present moment, anybody, because that's not where our mind goes. Our mind wants to go to the past or to the future. And so balance is bringing yourself back to the present. Balance is at every point getting yourself into a moment of inquiry. How am I doing right now? Am I honoring what I need right now? Am I allowing myself, am I giving myself permission to do what I need to do right now? And oftentimes we don't, because it requires us to get off the chair and stop writing for 10 hours in front of our computer and actually going taking a walk. We don't like doing that because it breaks us from our habitual mood, and yet it's just so important.
So, Thais, what is your system for success in maintaining balance or trying to stay in a state of balance in your life?
That's a great question. Well, one of the things that I do is I do not wake up with an alarm as much as possible. And sometimes I can't, it's inevitable because I have an early morning appointment, but I try not to book anything before 10 a.m. And I really honor myself the necessary sleep that my body needs. And so most days I wake up between 7 and 7:30, but there will be mornings where I wake up later and there will be mornings I wake up earlier. And by honoring the flow of my body and waking up when my body wants to wake me up, I'm naturally sinking into the flow of my life.
So, Thais and I are exact opposites in this realm. My alarm goes off 7 days a week at between 6 and 6:30 every single day.
I
Yes,
always get a good morning text from Brie at like 6 in the morning. Good morning.
usually with a little sunshine, a little heart emoji, like it's a new day. Come on, it's so exciting. But for me, there's something about getting up early in the morning that just it's my time, and it gives me the space to be awake and be alive and be centered and be grounded within myself while the rest of the world is sleeping.
So you see right here, 2 different people find 2 different ways to find balance. And so balance is not me telling you what to do. Balance is you finding for yourself what feels really good and finding for yourself what works for you. Some things don't work for me. Some things do. Gluten works for me and I really like it. It tastes really yummy.
Yet another way we're exact opposites.
So and that's totally fine. It's part of the flow and cycle of life. And here's the problem with the diet industry. Number one problem. So I started out, I don't know if you guys that are listening know this, but when I first started my business, gosh, it must be 5 years now, it was as a health coach. And so I learned a lot about the health industry and the diet industry. And one of the things that I've learned in nutrition school is that the problem with nutrition is that there are the science around nutrition that says that this is good for you is really, really based on the body. And so what may be good for one person isn't necessarily good for the other. And this type of science is different than all other types of science where it's more black and white, where this works and this doesn't work. in nutrition, what works for one is not guaranteed to work for another because it doesn't take into consideration their DNA, genetic makeup, their ancestors, their current lifestyle. It just nutrition takes in so many different factors. And the problem with the diet industry is that it really creates this this idea that if it works for one, it has to work for everybody else. And that's why a lot of diets don't work, and it causes a lot of problems in our society where we think that there's something wrong with us because we're doing all these things and it's not working for us, and it's because we're honoring other people's wisdom over our own.
I've never been a dieter.
Really, you've never gone on a diet?
Mm-mm.
Never.
Mm-mm.
Get out of town.
Yeah, no,
You're like the 1%.
I don't care.
You're the 1%.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I am on a very strict diet right now.
Oh,
Very.
you should see Brie though. If you took sugar away from me, it would be like the nightmare. It'd be like Satan coming back to eat you. And when Brie, like she's gone off sugar 10 months, I literally haven't heard her complain once. Yeah, you're right. You've never been on a diet. Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing.
I've never cared.
Really?
I mean, I try to eat healthy, which for the most part I have to. But yeah.
Huh. Well, that's a totally different story for me. I started figuring out that there was something wrong with me around middle school when I started getting hips. I'm Brazilian. I apparently, supposedly, have to have hips. That's a thing that Brazilians have. But to me, I thought it means I was getting fat. And I was starting to gain weight. When you're little, you don't really gain fat in the same way because it burns so easily. And so you reach a point where your metabolism slows just a little bit around high school. And so I started plumping up. I mean, I wasn't fat. I was just gaining weight like a natural teenager. But to me, I felt like I was gaining bad weight. And yeah, I would compare. I would go on a scale every day. I was horrified when I went from a size 0 to a size 2. Oh my gosh, that's amazing that you've never been on a diet.
Well, I've never been on a diet, but that's not to say like when I was, I think 5, I was in gymnastics and I thought I looked fat in my leotard. And so instead of
Can you
doing
imagine
something,
little Brie, little 5-year-old Brie?
and I've seen a photo of me in a leotard since then, and it's so fascinating to see, like, to look at it from a different perspective. Because
Yeah.
I was not a fat child ever, and I always saw myself as a fat child. But instead of dieting, I just hid. So, like, instead of
Oh,
dieting, I just quit gymnastics. And
fascinating.
instead of dieting, I would just wear big baggy clothes. And I was a wallflower, and I just didn't want people to see me. I didn't want to diet because I freaking love food.
Right.
But, like, I decided to just, kind of recede from life.
That's really interesting. Yeah. See, again, this is where two people are different. One of the things that I'm very adamant about around the conversation of dieting when I was a health coach and now just in my own life, because I no longer really talk nutrition to my clients, although I do tend to attract women who have experienced dieting and binge eating in the past because one, they connect with my story of binge eating, and two, they tend to have the type of personality of women that I work with, which is women who are trying to find their enoughness and their worth, because that's a lot of the work I did. So of course I'm going to naturally attract that. That's a total digression. Anyway, so one of the things that I found was that I cannot deprive myself. If you take something away from me, if you tell me I can't have chocolate, I will binge on it. I cannot deprive myself of anything or else I will binge. And it's good for me because it's taught me how to find moderation and how to give myself permission to eat foods that in the past I would never allow myself to eat. Before, I could never have a pint of Ben& and Jerry's ice cream in my fridge because I would eat it all. So I never allowed myself to have ice cream until about 3 years ago when I first allowed myself to have ice cream. And it's gotten to the point now where I can have a Ben& and Jerry's ice cream in the freezer and eat one bite a day, and that's totally fine. But what I'm trying to get at is that it's so fascinating that for me, my philosophy is don't deprive. You cannot deprive yourself if you want successful results. And Brie has had to deprive herself because of health reasons. She's had to deprive herself of gluten and she's deprived herself of sugar. And for her, it totally works. For her, she's like, she doesn't suffer at all. She's
Well,
completely.
plus or minus.
Yeah, well, there's always the occasional. But for the most part, like, she doesn't really suffer. She doesn't complain about it. It's not like a huge thing for her where she feels that she's being deprived. And that's what's really cool about nutrition and health, and most specifically, flow and balance, is that it has to look different for everybody. And you have to find the one that works for you.
Yeah. I don't recommend the full deprivation. However, if you have to do it, it is possible.
Yeah,
It's just not ideal. Believe me, I used to live by the moderation rule. Everything in moderation. I could eat whatever I wanted as long as it was in moderation. And now I don't really have that choice anymore. Or if I do, I am well aware that I am suffering consequences at some later date.
right.
My birthday in May, I think I drank champagne 7 days straight, and champagne doesn't really fit into the whole no sugar diet thing. And at the end of it, I mean, I knew, and I had to then quickly adjust in the exact opposite direction for a long time, and use some of the health remedies and some of the things that I know in order to support myself. So I know that if I do decide to not stay on the deprivation train, that there are some consequences, and that then I have to work even harder in the opposite direction
Totally.
to get back to that center balance point.
Yeah, I love it. There are two things that I want to make sure that I touch on, just specifically around dieting, that is really was really helpful for me in finding my balance and finding my grounding in my body. One, to eat around the seasons. So not everyone is lucky enough to live in Los Angeles and experience 60-degree weather and 70-degree weather all year long. But for those of you that experience winters and springs and summers and falls, the recommendation is to eat around the seasons. And what do I mean by that? So when it's hot out, the body will naturally want foods that will cool itself down. So that includes salads, like light things, salads, ice water, or ice cream, colder foods, right? That are light, refreshing. Watermelon is a great one. The fruits that grow around the season tell us what we should be eating. So watermelon is a summer food. Why? Because it's light, it's refreshing, and it's cool in the body, as opposed to in the winter time when the body naturally craves warm foods. So that's when you should be eating warmer lunches instead of salads. You should really avoid salads in the winter time. You're doing your body a disservice because you're not actually going to feel grounded and full. So wintertime is a great time for soups. It's a good time for heartier vegetables. It's a good time to warm up your leftovers as opposed to eating them cold.
So this is really interesting because even though I live in LA, there's one habit that I still have not been able to break from seasonal eating, and that is the fact that I cannot eat soups or chilies any months but like November, December, January, and February.
That's amazing.
And even in LA, it's still not that cold here, but I will still make chili, like we had chili for Christmas,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of funny that
Yeah.
that has been my habit for so long, that
Yeah.
even though I live in a warm climate now,
Yeah, and
it
that's
still
very
maintains.
telling though of the body's wisdom. The body, our ancestors' body, it has wisdom and it's telling us things when we're craving certain things. And Katie is the expert for this. So if you have any questions, just wait till her interview. But when you crave chocolate, it's an actual craving for something. Every craving that we have is actually a psychological desire for something. And so when you can start connecting that and honoring the need of your body, you actually start feeling more present. You feel more at home in your body. You feel like you're not against yourself. And I feel like a lot of us feel like we're against ourselves, like we're not actually supporting ourselves. And this is why. All right. And so my other thing that I want to make sure that I mention is to eat in alignment with the way your ancestors ate. And this is actually a really big one. The way that people in Asia eat are different than people in South America. So if you have a lineage in Asia, you're probably going to gravitate towards food that are more in alignment with the diet of the Asian culture and cuisine, versus someone that was born or has ancestors deeply seated in South America. The diet may be different. And when I went vegetarian for about a year, um, I had a lot of difficulties not eating meat protein. And I was doing everything I could to make sure I was getting the right nutrients. So I was eating a lot of vegetables. I was doing everything correctly. And I was still really suffering. My poops weren't solid. I don't know if that's TMI, but like I never had good poops for a whole year. My colon hated me. Like I was experiencing a lot of pain. And it finally came down to the conversation with myself that I was going to have to eat meat. And so now I do it, of course, very consciously. And I, really feed and support the organic farmers and locally owned and produced farmers, because I feel like by buying meat from them, I'm investing in their market. And one of the things that I've recognized is that I'm from Brazil, and in Brazil, and my lineage is from Brazil. We're a very big meat eating culture. My body naturally craves that type of food. And so I'll notice that whenever I'm experiencing anxiety or experiencing a need to eat something, my natural propensity is bread and butter, because that's what I grew up eating for breakfast, was bread and butter. And so for me, that's a naturally like grounding food. So I will allow myself to get a bread and butter. Like it's not taboo. It's just doing it in moderation, doing it when you feel the desire for it.
So what you're saying is I should be eating a lot of fish and chips and shepherd pies and beer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
All of the things that I
All of the
can't have.
things. All of the things. Exactly. And of course, like this is not a stead rule. Like you got to figure out what's good for you. And yeah, this is just one recommendation. Just notice, what did your ancestors eat? And is that something that you naturally align to? And if not, that's okay. My dad, he's from Colorado. He's comes from a mountain family, and yet he prefers Asian cuisine, and he doesn't have a lineage in that, but that's okay. He honors that. And that's just what I'm saying about this whole idea of flow and finding balance and center and health in your life, is to really notice the cycles of your life, to notice what you're eating, how you're consuming it, making sure that it's really allowing yourself to feel good.
Oh my gosh, Thais, one of our favorite people in the whole world is about to join us.
Ooh, I'm so excited because Katie is one of our dear friends. She was one of my first friends when I moved to LA. She's one of in our mastermind. She's brilliant. She's a health expert. She's just amazing. And I'm so so excited to have Katie on today. So before we dive into the actual conversation, let me just share with you guys what Katie is all about. A lover of all things health and wellness, Katie Bressack is a women's health expert living in Los Angeles. Katie works to help implement simple, healthy choices that make a big impact on women's health. Katie specializes in healthy weight loss, hormone balance, and body love. With Katie's support, the women she counsels loses weight, eats healthier, maintains a balanced mood, that's so important, increases energy level, and lives a healthier and more vibrant life. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good morning, beautiful. Thanks so much for being here. So, the question that we ask everyone to lead off the podcast is one of our favorite questions. What does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
Oh, I just love this question. I've been thinking about this, and I really feel like for me, being amplified is about being authentic. It's really about kind of letting those walls down that we kind of really create around us that we're not even aware exist, and just being ourselves and being very open and authentic without any judgment or any feedback. It's not about being authentic to get feedback back, but just being authentic so that you can actually live the life that you really desire. I just feel like for some reason authentic just keeps coming to my mind.
I mean, of course it does, because I think you are one of the most authentic people that I know, or that we know, because I'm speaking for Bree here. And we just love, love, love what you're up to in the world. And let's hear a little bit more. Tell us how, or tell our audience, because I know the answer to this, but how did you get started in the health world? Like, what prompted you to get started down that track?
Oh my goodness. So many years ago, when I was living in New York City, I was a hot mess.
Tell us more about that.
We love hot messes.
I like look back at my life and it's just so unrecognizable at this point. But I was really trying to, you know, build on this idea that I had to be CEO and just kind of like climbing that corporate ladder and working really hard, not necessarily smart, in all things that just weren't my passion. And the more stress that I had from the job, the more stress that my body felt. And I just got this crazy chronic sinus infection. And I always was sick growing up. I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire. The weather changes hourly. I had antibiotics my whole life. I was always getting ear infections. So by the time I was 27, and all this stress kind of really affected my body in a way where I had this sinus infection that didn't go away. It was horrible. had it for about a year. I went to about 10 different doctors. I went to ear, nose, and throat specialists. They're like, oh, you need sinus surgery. And I was like so defeated, but I also just felt in my heart that there was something else out there. Like there had to be a better, healthier way than going under the knife. And I finally found a holistic doctor who changed my life. She sat with me for about an hour and she asked me questions that nobody had asked me in a long time, but especially a doctor. Like, do you like your job? I was like, hell no. Are you in a good relationship? I'm like, no, not really. Just all these questions that had nothing, or so I thought, had nothing to do with my health and my wellness. And I left that day with a prescription for a neti pot, probiotics, yoga, and meditation. And because by the end of the conversation, she's like, you just need to learn how to relax. She's like, you were 27 years old. You're not married. You don't have any kids. All you have to do is go to work. Like, it should not be that hard. And it just was kind of this momentum that just started. And I was like, well, and it was also, you know what the thing was too? It was also the first time in my life where I actually felt in control of my own health. I just feel like for so many of us, especially women, we've just been kind of told what to do with our health in terms of everything. If you have an ear infection, take antibiotics. If you have stomach pain, take medication. Or if you have crazy PMS, like go on the pill and maybe you need to take Prozac. And we're really not taught how to be so in tune with our bodies and be really the leader of our own body. So I listened to her because I was like, well, nothing else has worked. Like, I have to try it. If I don't try this, like, I'm back to ground zero. And I haven't had a sinus infection since, which is a miracle. And I'm 37 now. So it's about 10 years that I've gotten sick and colds and things like that, but not, I was miserable. I was really sick. My stomach pain kind of slowly went away, started eating differently, and I actually discovered yoga. It took me several more years to actually be okay with meditation. That was one thing I was resisting for a really long time. But it was just my aha moment, and it just started, my whole life just started to kind of change. A little slow at first, and then as soon as it kind of gained momentum, I left the corporate world and I went back to school, and I've been really supporting and helping women live healthier lives since.
Beautiful. So I am also one where, I very much have like pushed life and tried to achieve a whole lot and all of these things. And so when I first started to learn to relax, it was very much like, I remember sitting on a beach in Hawaii being like, okay, now I have to relax. Like, how do I relax? So this is me relaxing. So what was the process like for you of learning how to relax and learning how to unravel all of the stress and tension that was around, your corporate life?
It's interesting because I think it's just something I'm constantly learning how to be better at. I think the first thing for me was I started going to yoga at lunch, and it really helped me separate my day where I could like go to work, get stuff done, and take this huge breather and then go back and like finish it. That was really kind of life changing. And I never told any of my bosses that that's what I was doing. And they like, but what happened is like I started doing better at my job. I started, bringing in more revenue for the company. I started having better meetings, and they asked me what I was doing differently, and I was like, I'm not gonna tell them. Like, I don't want them to like judge me, because in such a corporate culture, taking a lunch break and working out and going to yoga is sadly like frowned upon at some companies. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna go sweat. I'm gonna come back and like just get my stuff done. But I think right now in my life, it's something that whenever I feel really, really worked up, I just take my dog for a walk. I just leave the house. It's something that I have to really be conscious of doing, because I think those type A personalities, like, never disappear. It's just it's a choice to kind of mold the day in a way that feels better. And actually, because of Bree's suggestion, I've been doing Miracle Morning,
Yay!
and I love it. I've been doing it for about 3 weeks now, and it has changed my whole day. Um, Helped me just get really clear and focused, get all that garbage. And usually, like, why I'm so wound up is because of those own garbage thoughts in my head. So it definitely does help kind of get the garbage out of my head before I actually have to and want to actually start working.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love this conversation because it feels so relevant to my life right now. I've realized that I've been really hustling and building a business this past year. It's almost going to be my 1 year of being in business full time by myself, and just this past month I've realized how hard I've been on myself on having to achieve certain results at a certain time. And I know that I'm not speaking alone. For all of us who are type A, for all of us who have a desire to change the world and be better and be stronger every day, it is a constant tug between, yes, I have all these things I want to accomplish and I want to do and I want the results yesterday, and that's not being fulfilled. That's not being fulfilled. And I had a real heart to heart moment with my mom. And we had this conversation where she's like, all right, you've hustled up to this point. When are you going to actually start leading a fulfilling life? And I realized that there is a difference. There is a difference between the go-getter, the pushing herself, and the being fulfilled and joyous. And I think, Katie, you are just such one of my mentors in this element, in this aspect of my business, because I see you and I see how you operate your life and your business. And, one of the things that you've taught me is do what feels good. Just do what feels good every day. And so I want to thank you for teaching me that, and not only saying it to me, but also exemplifying it. I think you just do it so beautifully.
Oh, well, thank you. It's definitely did not happen in my first few years of business. So I'm really proud of you that you are where you are in your first year and changing that course a little bit, because I think it will make all the difference.
Totally, totally. So tell us, so one thing that you mentioned too, and this is something I kind of want to dive into, is this idea that you felt like you had no other choice. It was like, all right, I basically have no other choice here. I'm just going to have to do what this doctor tells me to do because I don't want to go under the knife. And you did it. And I feel like a lot of women, when they reach rock bottom, they don't feel like they have any other choice. And that's when they open themselves up to the possibility of something new. So tell us a little bit more about that specific transition for you. Like, what was it like in your mind at that time when you were like, holy crap, like I either do this thing called meditation or I have to get surgery?
It was one of those moments where I was like, I feel so stuck. Like, I had insomnia, like I was not sleeping. I was like drinking wine at night to like help me sleep. I was crying all the time. Well, I would like go to bed and wake up and be like, I can't get back to sleep because my heart was like beating out of my chest. So I was like, maybe I'll have some wine to help me get back to sleep. Like, I just knew in my heart that what I was doing wasn't for pleasure. It was it was more kind of just like, I'm at my wit's end. Like, I don't know what else to do. And I just knew that I couldn't function my life like this anymore. Like, it was one of those moments where I don't cry all the time. I'm a fun person. I just was kind of at this rock bottom. I was also dating somebody that I shouldn't have been. It was like all these things combined where I was like, oh my God, like it was almost like I was drowning and this doctor was kind of like throwing me that life vest, and I was like, I either grab onto it or I just stay here. And for me, I've always kind of done things maybe not the easiest way. And I was like, I'm just gonna go the easy way now. Like, she's basically telling me that I can change my life without without drugs. I can like do things in a new way. And I called my mom because moms always know, right? And I was like, this is what this doctor told me. And I honestly felt like it was crazy because it was so out of the box. And my mom was like, well, nothing else has worked. Like, what do you have to lose at this point? And that's kind of just how I felt. Like, there's nothing else to lose, only to gain. And I'm so happy that I really listened and I trusted that inner voice in my head that was like, it just sounds easier. It just sounds better.
Awesome.
And that was just kind of like that moment.
So, for women who are kind of at that breaking point and so stressed out and feel like they're up against a wall and don't really see an out, what is one thing that you recommend in your practice to get them out of that place, to maybe reduce their stress a little bit, to open up a window where, the door might be closed, or, is there one thing that you kind of recommend for women?
I always like to ask women that I work with, like, how do you really want to feel? Like, what would, in your ideal day life, like, what is that feeling that you really want? And then let's figure out, like, what's actually blocking that. A lot of it is our own inner voice, a lot of it is this idea of being something that we're not even sure we want to be. But I always feel like if we can really tap into how we want to feel and write it down, like, I love post-it notes. I've got them all over my house. Write down how you want to feel, like, what motivating words, how can we kind of just get you thinking in a new way? And I just feel like it's so important for women to ask ourselves how we want to feel, because we're so about doing and crossing things off a to-do list, and at the end of the day feeling so depleted because we haven't really done much to fill us up in the way that we really need and want to be filled up.
I think that's beautiful. And I think one of the things that creates stress, and this is something that I talk a lot about in the work I do with my clients, is I feel like we do things 3 times. We think about it before we do it, and then we think about how we did it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
if we're spending, our time thinking about doing things 3 times, and of course we're going to be stressing out, and of course we're going to be overwhelmed, and of course we're going to be running ourselves dry, because instead of just doing it once, we're doing it 3 times. And so I love this idea, or this conversation about stress, because I feel like as technology allows our lives to get faster, and as we get more and more interconnected, now in corporations, employees are expected to answer their emails at any time during the night or during the day, because they are connected and they can be checking their emails all the time. It creates this suction of energy, and then we feel completely burned out. And so I think stress is something that if we don't consciously mitigate, we're going to get sucked in. And so thank you for your tip. I think that that's so beautiful, to really get clear on how you want to feel and what may be stopping you from feeling that way, writing it down, get clarity on it, and then really commit to doing it, to actually honor that what feels good in your life may be where you need to go.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of it with the technology and a lot about the expectations, like, as women, we have to create healthy boundaries in all areas of our life, our work, our families, our children, because if we're the ones that create those boundaries, and we have the right to turn email off. Like, we have the right not to check email until we come to the office. If something is really urgent, someone can call you. But I just feel as we move forward and we kind of really bring in this more feminine energy and into the world, I really feel like it is up to us to create those healthy boundaries, because men, they do respond, like, they do listen to the way that women work if we all kind of shift this way together.
Boundaries are one of my hot topics right now. I'm all about this. So I just recently wrote this blog about busy, and how, basically we're all very busy because we can't say no to things. And if we were to all go to our calendars right now and cross off 5 things on our calendars and just say no to them. And I had this woman who responded on my Facebook, and I don't know her. I've never met her. We're not friends on Facebook. We don't have any mutual friends. And it really riled her up because she was like, well, it's easy for you to say no to things because you're single and don't have any children. And so I would love,
Interesting.
I know, I would love to hear from you, like what's your way of establishing boundaries? How do you know what to say yes to, what to say no to, and really keeping that healthy balance within your life?
Something that I try to do, and try is a key word, because I think it's a process for all of us, is I really, things that I'm like, not like a hell yes right away. I'm like, thank you so much for thinking of me. Let me check my calendar. Let me get back to you.
Yes.
I try not to answer yes, unless it's something that I'm like, I can feel my whole body just being like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, let's do it. But I just feel like as women, we become these yesers, like, to everybody, and we don't even know if we want to do something.
I love that word. I'm going to start using that word.
Stop being a
Yesers.
yeser.
And the thing with the busy, and like, I feel like when women kind of respond like that too, it's because they know deep down that that they're not taking care of themselves. And like and they don't know how to, and they don't know where to start. And it's more of a defense mechanism rather than being, rather than actually believing it, because this whole idea of busy, and I totally agree with you, we're creating this idea of being busy so it makes us look more important. When someone is always busy, I'm like, oh, well, then you don't have your priorities in order, or you're just like disorganized. Like, there's no way that you can be busy for things that are important to you.
Yes.
It's just figuring out like what's important to you.
Preach.
And we all are different.
We're just like hallelujahing over here. So if you find yourself in a place where you've previously said yes to something, and all of a sudden the day comes and it's not a hell yes to you anymore, and all of a sudden something shifted and it's no longer in alignment for you, do you honor that? And if so, how do you eloquently change your yes to a no?
I do honor that. It's something that I've practiced. And I feel like with people that are close in my life, when I say no, they respect it. And when I do change my mind, they understand that I'm not going, not because I don't want to be there, but because I'm really honoring myself. And I think, to be honest, I've learned that a lot from you two ladies. You know, I feel like the more that I watch other amazing women in my life really honor themselves, it really helps me honor my choices and my decisions too.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that I do, and I've practiced, because of course this is always a practice and there's always a next step and it's always an evolution, is I do my best not to apologize for my no, because I feel like when we approach it from this apologetic, like, I'm so sorry, and that energy of almost like the sense of groveling, it's not really empowering ourselves and empowering and honoring our desires, which is that this just isn't coming to me at the right time. And so sometimes, you know, I have to get my thoughts together and I have to write it out before I have the conversation because I want to articulate it clearly. But often it goes something like, I really appreciate you extending this invitation to me. I acknowledge you. I acknowledge the work that you're doing. This is not something that I am interested in at the time, but I may be interested in this in the future. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me in a few months. Or sometimes we get people that are interested in joining our podcast, but we are filled up and we don't have space. We're booked out months in advance. And so our response is not, I am so sorry that we're packed, because we're not sorry. This is something that we hold near and dear to our hearts, and we want guests that are of high caliber. So instead we responded, thank you so much for asking to be on this podcast, we are booked out months in advance. Please reach back out to us in a few months and we will see if we can coordinate our schedules then. That empowers us with our time. And if people are really committed to joining us, they will send out another email in a few months' time. So thank you so much, Katie, for bringing up this conversation, because I think boundaries and saying yes or saying no and being apologetic, it's all part of learning how to be powerful women, being compassionate, being kind, but also really honoring our boundaries.
Yeah. No, for sure. And something else I like to tell my clients to do too is, look at your month ahead. I love doing it like at the beginning of each month. And seriously, like block off nights, block off days on the weekends or hours on the weekends with your name and treat it as if it's an appointment with anything else in your life where you don't cancel. And that's your time. So we don't just keep adding things to our schedule because it's so easy to do that.
I totally agree, especially living in Los Angeles. I get invites. I mean, I even got an invite yesterday at noon for an event that was happening in like 6 hours. And it could have been so easy for me to be like, oh my gosh, I have to, I don't have anything going on tonight. I have to say yes to this and get out of the house and blah, blah, blah. And it's so easy to all of a sudden look down at your calendar and be like, holy shit, my month of May or whatever is like so full. Like I have 0 nights to myself. And so I totally agree. For me though, like you, Katie, my mornings are my like me time for sure. And I still block off a few evenings too, but that 3 hours every morning is my non-negotiable Brie time to like really connect and get centered. So.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing too in this conversation is this idea of changing your mind. I think that it's important that we give ourselves permission to change our minds. We may have been a hell yes maybe months ago, and now we're not a hell yes anymore. And maybe we really wanted to do this project, and now we don't want to do this project. I've had so many opinions in my past where now I'm like, I believe something completely different. And if we don't allow ourselves to change our minds, if we don't allow ourselves to go with the flow of our current needs, then we really block off our life force.
Oh, yeah. And then we just I feel like that's what's actually creating that feeling of like being stuck and frustrated even more.
Yeah.
Because when you just get piled on and things to do and all these things, I don't know about you, but that's when I'm like, oh, I just want to sit and watch TV. Like I can't even like function because I just feel like too overbooked and it's too overwhelming.
So Katie, give us your beautiful like a tip or an advice for women who want to find a little bit more balance in their lives besides just putting in their calendar, because I know you juggle a lot. I mean, you spend a lot of quality time with your husband and your beautiful puppy. I know that you spend a lot of time working, but you also spend time going to yoga. I mean, every time that we talk, you are working while simultaneously knowing when to stop and when to take a walk. So how do you personally manage and juggle all the moving parts in your life?
I think fortunately and unfortunately, I do have a list of things. I have realized, I don't want to create a to-do list necessarily to cross things off, but if I don't have things written down in front of me, I just kind of don't feel as focused. So I don't really call it a to-do list as much as like kind of a creation list. And I just write down, things that I actually really want to do. But it's not about crossing it off. It's more about keeping focused. I don't know. I think we all have adult ADD at this point with technology and like invitations and everything. So that helps me kind of stay focused, which helps me stay balanced. I also, I'm a big believer in eating for my cycle and, keeping my hormones really balanced and knowing the times of the month where I'm going to have the most creativity, the more energy, at the beginning of the cycle. And then at the end of the cycle is when I am going to want to be more introverted. I'm going to want to be less saying yes. That's the time when I'm going to do long walks. So I really try to think about my body in terms of how it's actually feeling, in terms of what I'm actually creating and doing too.
This is one of my favorite things about you. I love that you bring this conversation because this is not something that most people are familiar with or even talk about, and this is something I learned all from you, because this was, to me, mind-blowing when you shared this concept of knowing that your cycle, your body cycle, actually impacts your energy cycle. I mean, now that I say it, I'm like, no duh, but when you first introduced this concept to me, it was totally a novel idea, because I, for some reason, had never connected the fact that my body cycle is right there with the cycle of my energy and how I feel creative. So share a little bit more about how does your body cycle impact your creativity?
So much. I mean, right after we get our period, our energy levels start going up and we have more estrogen in our body. And that's when we feel like more creative. The energy is flowing. We feel like that's when we should be doing presentations, and that's when we should be really kind of talking and going out as much as we can. And then as the estrogen starts lowering and the progesterone comes up, that's when our body wants to kind of relax. And this is when I personally, and most women that I know, this is when we feel like we're not doing enough. This is when we feel kind of like stuck and really low. And I had a day last week and I was like, okay, a lot of it's in my head, a lot of it's my body, a lot of it's the hormonal changes. And it was nice. I had you two ladies to kind of give me a pep talk, but I also knew that it was something that I could do by eating something. So I kind of just checked to see what week I was on. I added some more like foods in, and just kind of figuring that out. Yeah, Alyssa Vitti, who wrote the Women Code, is a genius, and I've learned so much of this from her.
We will make sure to add that in the show notes, as well as the miracle morning, because I think a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in learning more about it.
Yeah.
Katie, can I just hire you to like do my whole food plan for me? Because I remember the conversation we had about this, and when you taught Thais and I and Mira about this stuff, and my takeaway from it was not any of this stuff. I don't remember talking about any of this stuff, and even just listening to it now, I'm like, I do not have the capacity to even think about learning what I need to eat during what times of the month. So how do you recommend that women kind of get started with this?
It sounds overwhelming, but when you actually break it down and you think about it, so like the week before your period is when that's when your body's going to be craving tons of chocolate. So that's when you should be eating tons of chocolate. That's when you should be having like raw cacao and a lot of foods with iron and magnesium in them. When you're on your period, you're really going to want more like soothing, nourishing foods, like sweet potatoes and avocados, like things that are just like healthy, fatty foods that also are comforting. And then as your period goes away, that's when you're going to feel lighter. So eating more lighter foods, having a lot of greens and, then it's adding grains in. So it sounds overwhelming. I could definitely help you out and give you some pointers, but it's really kind of understanding, how your body's actually feeling. And you know what, too, if you were to pause for a second and actually were like, what is my body craving? What is it really looking for? I bet it's what is actually on the cycle eating too.
Interesting. So you want to know what my top takeaway was when we first had this conversation?
Yes.
Total transparency. This is probably TMI, but Katie told me it's like the week after your period is when your boobs look the best. That's when I should be going out on dates.
Oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever.
No, but it's the week before your period.
Oh, the week before?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I've been doing it wrong.
Oh, well,
So
maybe
you gotta,
that's why.
Change your dating cycle.
I know, maybe I should consult you more. I'll send all my dates through you first, Katie. They can schedule with you. How's that sound?
Oh, Katie, we love you and we love having you. Katie is our resident health expert. She just has all the answers. And this is someone who not only talks the talk, she walks it. She's there. She's eating foods that feel good for her. And I just love you, Katie. I'm so grateful for you in our lives. Tell us, for those that are interested in learning more about their hormone balance and learning how to make eating healthy easy, because I know you do it so well, how can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so I would love to invite you all to my free online training. It's called Shift, and it's 5 unexpected ways that you can actually start living a healthier life right now. If you go to
Ooh.
my homepage at katiebressack.com, it's right on the homepage, and you could just click to it, sign up, and get instant access to it.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely add that to our show notes.
Katie, we love you and we're so grateful for you. I mean, not only as our guest, but you've been the for those of you that don't know, Katie and Tice and me and our good friend Mira have a mastermind that we've been doing for the last 6 months. And it truly has revolutionized all 4 of our lives individually and collectively. And we just love you so much. And we're so grateful to have you share your wisdom with all of our other people and not just us selfishly every week.
Well, I'm so grateful for you two ladies, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, love. Thanks again for everyone who joined us today and who's listening to our episode. For more information about the Amplify Collective, you can go to www.theamplifycollective.com. You can also find us on Facebook /The Amplify Collective and on Instagram and Twitter at The Amplify Co. We will see you next week. We have another phenomenal guest, and thank you for joining us. Go be amplified.